my name is Anika Mahadeshwar. I'm 16 years old and a sophomore here at TEDxEnloeHighSchool High School. Today I will be establishing a complex relationship between inspirations and expectations. It wasn't until I was around 5 years old that I learned the true meaning of the phrase, "coming," a short, dismissive response that leads to a vast amount of pestering from your parents, making sure you're on the way home after a play date with your friends, popsicles after swim practice, and playtime with your toys before dinner. I was so accustomed to my older sister hardly moving an inch after responding to a summon with, "coming," that I was truly convinced it was simply an acknowledgement and decline, that I was confused when my parents would grow increasingly frustrated with the fact that I would say I was coming and then not show up until hours later on my own time. The role my older siblings played in my brain development is so incredibly significant. My knowledge of the world first came to be from analyses I made of my sister's behavior. Therefore, they soon became my role models. I wanted to do everything they did, because for a while, it was all I knew. To be an inspiration is to make and encourage others to want to achieve something. To me, my biggest inspirations are my sisters. As the youngest, I've had a vast amount of exposure to common milestones of life, many years in advance. Consequently, I've always felt like there was a simple path to life, the way math can have a simple formula to a solution. Stuff like, oh, make sure you don't get that teacher, she's really strict. I always thought I was really lucky to receive tips and tricks here and there from their experiences, until I caught myself worrying about the SAT and college applications in the 4th grade. I soon began to lose a sense of identity, because I had felt like I had already gained enough information on everything I would need to go through that I didn't need to be present when it was actually my turn to go through them. I remember in 6th grade when I was signing up for electives, I felt so disturbed that I hadn't received Spanish for my language course the way my sister had. My path for middle school was thrown off because I would have to take German, something I hadn't previously accounted for. My expectation was not met in the slightest. I stressed about who would help me with my homework and how I might be wasting my time because at some point my sister had mentioned how it was so helpful to learn Spanish because Latin music was beautiful and Spanish was soon to become a globally spoken language. However, after just one day of German class, I was shocked because I enjoyed it so much. The culture and overall experience of the class made me realize that had I simply followed my sister's path, I would have never even found out how much I enjoyed German. I soon began to realize the complexity of setting high expectations on yourself based on the outcome of another. Going to a magnet middle school was an interesting experience, to say the least. Getting thrown into such a competitive environment, knowing very little about yourself as a person, was quite the learning opportunity. To put things into perspective, I was taking multiple high school level math classes in 7th grade and was still never considered as one of the smarter people, simply because so many others were doing this and some at an even higher level. It was constant stress and pressure to excel in these classes when our biggest priority should have been our health. Minutes after taking tests, my classmates would typically have these debrief discussions on how the test went. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that frantic, "Wait, what did you get for number 3? I got B." I always try to stray away from these conversations because, the test was over. What good was knowing if I got a question right or wrong now? I already handed it in. However, I do specifically remember overhearing the amount of people who would say things like, "Man, I had to study so hard for that test. If I get below a 95, my parents will never speak to me." What? I remember being so confused because my parents had never said anything like that to me. They always encouraged me to try and do my best because that is literally all in my power that I can do. Of course, they'd be concerned if I got a bad grade, but they'd ask me if I need help and how I need help, not threaten to take away my phone, limit my ice cream intake, or stop me from seeing my friends. And for that, I do thank them. It was then, however, that I was able to distinguish the difference between my classmates and I. No one was creating these high expectations for me. There was no outer factor. It was me. I was the one making every milestone life-determining. I was the one expecting myself to be just like my siblings. I was the one going into multiple situations, knowing of only one or two possible outcomes. So why did I have these high expectations? Why did I have a fixed mindset? I mean, I could see how harmful having high expectations was through my friends and their peers and their parents. I could see how constantly discouraged, anxious, and stressed they were. Yet for some reason, I still had them. Why? Let's go back to 5th grade. I had just recently quit competitive gymnastics because it was becoming too much of a time commitment. This might not seem like a big deal to you. However, it was a huge deal to me. Growing up, gymnastics and dance had been huge parts of my identity. Getting into that gymnastics team had been my goal for a majority of my life. And to have met that goal, enjoyed my time as a gymnast, and then quit, I was thrown out of loop. I didn't know what to do anymore. I didn't have that set goal or passion for any other sport. Yes, I'd been dancing my whole life, but there was no final, yay, you made it, that I knew of at the time. There was no milestone. So I deemed dance as not my next thing. However, my older sister Dimple, who's also a dancer, had been applying for colleges around the same time, and had quickly become engrossed in the vast college Bollywood dance team network. She would show me videos of these absolutely insane performances and said that she would one day be on one of those teams performing herself. And 2 years later, she was. She auditioned for a team and made it. But more importantly, she showed me that there was an end goal I could have for dance, meaning there was something I could put my energy towards. Seeing that something worked for my sister made me think, hey, maybe that same something could work for me. I can confidently say that had those interactions never had happened, I probably would have never started taking Kathak classes, an Indian classical dance form I'm currently training in and love. Dimple inspired me. She single-handedly kickstarted my passion for dance with her accomplishment. Unfortunately, with that, I also focused on the accomplishment itself. Another milestone yet to be met. But hey, what worked for her should work for me, right? This is why inspirations are similar to double-edged swords. Google defines a double-edged sword as something that can benefit you and help you, but also come at a harmful cost and potentially harm you. For example, during the reign of the Tang Dynasty in China, it was considered a double-edged sword when the Chinese made various alliances with nomadic groups. This was because although these alliances expanded their empire, it also gave the nomads access to the Silk Roads, a huge trading network. This meant that now the nomads could excel as merchants and eventually best the Chinese merchants, therefore hurting the Chinese economy. Similarly, inspirations can motivate you, but also discourage you just as fast. I saw how all these accomplishments my siblings had made helped them grow as people and presented them with various new opportunities, which is why I felt the need to accomplish as well. And when I didn't, I was thrown off my trajectory. In my AP World History class, we learned about the term presentism. Presentism essentially refers to ascribing modern values and perspectives to a past that didn't necessarily share them. For example, none of us would start a battle right now for land that contained a specific type of clay ideal for pot making to contain and collect water, because we get our water from the tap. If a historian were to not fully understand the necessity for this clay to gain access to water, then they would consider this whole battle, this whole event in time as absurd. Do you see how that's an issue? We cannot study the past through a present lens. Similarly, we absolutely cannot go into our new situations using the outcome of someone else's. Every single person, every single situation is different. You can only use another's insight to get an idea of what is out there. Yes, you can learn from their mistakes, but you cannot not face the fact that you will inevitably make your own. Life is full of mistakes. That's what it's for. It's a learning process. And although it's easier said than done, it is very important to at least be aware of this complex relationship between inspirations and expectations. Thank you.